Oh, God. Where do I begin? Well, I guess I could begin here. Hey, folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. Now that that fucking thing's out of the way. Um, okay. I feel like I'm in the press box at a hockey game, looking down at the ice, looking at the mayhem happening on the ice, and thinking to myself, I don't really want to go down there. I just don't want to go down there. It's comfortable up here. I got some food, some drinks, some snacks. It's a nice vantage point. It's a nice view. I really don't want to go down there. But, I mean, do I have something I could say about this? Yeah, I could, and I wasn't going to. But I truly believe that I can come at this from sort of a level-headed perspective. And it doesn't mean you're going to like what I'm going to say, okay? Again, as I say in a lot of my videos, I'm not here to confirm your biases. Whatever your biases are, they're yours and yours only. You might share them with people, but you don't necessarily share them with me, and that's fine. We don't have to. But I'm going to say what I feel and how I think, and based on what I see and what I know. Like I've said many times before, you guys deserve that. I deserve that. Everybody deserves that. Nobody wants to be duped around. Anyway, so talking about the test screening of the new Halloween film that apparently happened, and that it was first reported by a website called horrorfreaknews.com. I think that's what it was called. Now, I don't know them. They don't know me. I don't have any affiliation with them. Oh, geez, that's what happens when you got fucking curly hair. I don't know if they're a reputable source or not. I have no idea. They could be. I'm sure there's some people watching this video that are going to be like, no, man, they're fucking shit. They're fucking shit. Don't trust anything they say. And then there could be people that are like, no, man, I really like them. I found that when I read them, it's really good shit, man. It's really good shit. Whatever. I don't know. I can't speak to that, okay? So I'm just going to speak to the facts, what we know and what we don't know, and what likely is the scenario here. Let's talk about what a test screening is, first of all, okay, for those of you who don't know. Test screenings do happen. They happen with, by and large, with certain focus groups. There's sort of two test screenings that can happen. Usually there's a in-house one, a very personal sort of one that happens with the producers of the film, the writers, the director, whatever the case is. They're shown to just a small sort of group in maybe a small screening room where the film is being edited at the studio or at the production house. It's basically by and large everybody who's involved in the movie. Because they want to see sort of, the ebb and flow of the film, the picture lock, what we like, what we don't like, is that kind of too long, and they're seeing a lot of this shit. And we were made to believe that that was sort of what Jason Blum was talking about, and that's what I took anyway, when he said, I've seen a cut of the film. It's probably, when he said, I've seen a cut of the movie, I don't necessarily think that it was just him in a dark room with a bag of popcorn going, get out, I'm watching the movie! Like that. No, it was probably him. Ryan Turek might have been there. David Gordon Green was probably there. John Carpenter, maybe, but it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't. And there's a few people just kind of checking it out. Okay, we got sort of this first rough cut. Let's see what we got here. Let's see what we're working with. And that's kind of an in-house thing. That's not, to the general public. And then, of course, there is a test screening that happens when they feel sort of comfortable enough to move to that stage where they show a focus group. And a focus group essentially is exactly what it means. It's a focus on a certain group, on a certain demographic. The demographic for this Halloween movie is probably 18 to 34. That would be my guess. That's probably your target demographic because it's going to be a rated R movie. We know that. So you're looking at probably 18 would be your low point. Okay. And your high point might be, 34, 40, somewhere in there. So if a test screening did happen, okay, if it did, that was probably the ballpark of the age group, was probably somewhere in and around there. It's not going to be, there's not going to be a bunch of, 65-year-old people in there, and there's not going to be a bunch of 10-year-olds in there, okay? Because they want to see how it appeals to the demographic for which they're targeting. And usually test screenings do happen It's not usually a final cut of the movie. Okay, I mean, final cut, a final picture lock for a movie, like a final cut, like it's locked, sealed, signed, and almost nearly delivered. Sometimes doesn't happen for a few weeks before the movie comes out. Usually, if you're really good and you're on time and you're on budget, you don't want to push for that. You want to be sort of locked and loaded with plenty of time to go. But it's not unprecedented that can happen. But usually test screenings to a focus group, what ends up happening is somebody from the studio or the director or the producer will come out, welcome the audience and say, what you're going to see is Halloween or, whatever. This is where we are in post-production. This is where we are in editing. So ignore, the time code on the screen, or ignore this, or we have some music here, but not some music there. They want to sort of set them up and go, this is not a final version of the movie. So don't think that this is the movie you're going to go see in the theater, because it's not. We're still deep in post. We have enough here that we want to show you and get kind of like your opinions and what you think. And these people that are involved in the focus group are carefully chosen, and they all sign NDAs, which stands for non-disclosure agreement. I've signed a plethora of them in my voiceover career. And an NDA simply means that you're not allowed to talk about whatever it is you're working on or seeing until they say you can, or until the movie comes out, or whatever the deadline is. You're not allowed to talk about it. You're not even allowed to talk about it to your family. I'm sure people do. Hey, I saw the fucking, but theoretically, you're not supposed to say anything. Like, as far as, you are concerned, you weren't even there. It never happened, kind of thing, right? Especially for something as high profile as like Halloween or Star Wars or Marvel. Yeah, absolutely. Now, we know that the test screenings happen, but I'm saying what you see in those test screenings is like, I didn't see anything. And by and large, for the most part, things are not leaked. Considering the way things are today with the internet and online, it's pretty incredible how things are not leaked. Things are leaked, but, they could be a lot worse if you think about it, right? So usually NDAs keep people quiet. Not all the time, but usually they do. So that's sort of what a test screening is and why they have them. And then the producers and the studio will, and there usually is a questionnaire that you do fill out. The look of the questionnaire can vary. The questions can vary because it's usually dependent on the movie you saw. There are standard questions that would, coincide with any movie. Like, how did you like the ending? You know what I mean? Or, what did you think of this? Or what did you think of that? In terms of a filmmaking perspective, that would probably be on every questionnaire. And then there might be some that are very specific to the film that you saw. And they fill those out and they hand them in, and the studios at their discretion will make an executive decision based on what they see. Do they think that these are just petty kind of nitpicks and they're like, yeah, I can see what, no, we're good. Or is there a general consensus where it's like, everybody's kind of saying this is not good. Maybe we should think about altering this or changing this, or at least taking it into serious consideration. That's basically what it is. And then they make a decision whether or not they feel that the gripes about the film, if there are any, are worth changing, whether it's worth the money to go and change, if it's extensive. That's what a test screening is. Happens all the time with a lot of movies. It's also important to note that there have been test screenings that have proven to be amazing, and the movie's been garbage. The general public actually doesn't like it, but for some reason the focus group did. There's been test screenings where the focus group has hated the movie and the general public has been like, I don't know what they're talking about. I thought it was pretty good. It was all right. This is because all film is subjective. And especially for a high-profile film like Halloween, people have expectations and, what I want to see. Now, in regards to this article on horrorfreaknews.com, that named a source. There was apparently somebody who was at a test screening of this Halloween film, didn't name the source, but said that basically the source said, hey, I was there and I saw the movie with a bunch of people, and the general consensus sort of is, we're not crazy on it. Didn't like the ending, didn't like this, that, and the other. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'm not crazy on this. And Horror Freak News ran with it. And shame on you, Horror Freak News. And I don't mean shame on you because you're not in the business of trying to be the first to get to something. I understand it. I understand the business you're in. My father was a journalist. He passed away in 2011, but he, at one point in his career, he was the top Canadian sports journalist in the country. And he had job offers from Sports Illustrated, the New York Post, the Chicago Sun-Times. My dad covered all sorts of things. When he moved away from sports, he covered Princess Diana's funeral. When he was in sports, he covered the Mike Tyson trial back in the early 90s. I grew up in a media family, so I understand journalism very well. And I can say that, I get it. I understand why you want to be the first to something. But in this day and age, in online journalism, it's so easy for people to become a journalist. You throw up a website. I could throw up one today called bighorrornews.net. And I make my site look very similar to the sites that you see. And I start, but by and large, what these sites are doing, I'm not saying everybody is doing this, but when you look at all the sites, by and large, what they're doing a lot of the times is they're picking up each other's stories and they're running with it. Now, a lot of the times they do credit the original source, which is what you're supposed to do, but they post and they talk about it because it generates traffic to their site. That's what they do. I get it, but shame on you because you're sacrificing your ethics. You know very well that an NDA was signed, and you know very well that the probability of the studio coming to you, if true, if what your source is saying is true, the studio is going to come to you for two reasons. They're going to come to you, if it's true, they're going to come to you and say, take that fucking thing down. And then it's like, oh, you look like an idiot. If it's not true, but it's still damaging, the lies are damaging, the lies are potentially damaging for the momentum of the marketing campaign for the movie, they're going to come to you and say, take that fucking shit down. And then you look like a dick. I understand at a base level. I get why you want to run with it. And it's exciting, right? Oh, I got this source. It's exciting. But don't do that. Don't do that. This is a long-term game. Journalism is a long-term game. Okay? There's certain things that you can post and talk about in sources. There's other ways to draw traffic to your site. You don't have to say, well, I got this guy who knows a guy who was like, don't do that shit. Don't fucking do that shit. If you can't name the source, don't do it. Don't do it. Or at the very least say in your article, hey, don't know too much about this yet, but there might have been a screening. Can't talk too much about it, but, reviews are interesting. Or, you kind of allude to something maybe, but you don't come full on board and say, oh, here's what it is. Here's what's happening. Here's my source. Don't do that. Because if you can't verify the source, because, okay, here's the thing. You're hiding behind the NDA, okay? It's like the excuse, well, I'm going to write this long thing about this, what happened and all this, and what do you think of that? Draw traffic to my site, but I don't have to back it up. Oh, yeah, there was an NDA. There was an NDA, guys. There was an NDA. Sorry, there was an NDA. Fuck off, okay? Fuck off. If you can't verify, that's what journalism's about. You come with facts. I'm not a journalist, okay, but you're in the journalism game. All these sites are iHorror, Bloody Disgusting, Movie Web, Horror Freaks, Den of Geek, I think that's one. All sorts of these things. If you want to get into the game, then you got to be ethical. Are you wondering why sites like Movie Web and, Variety and Hollywood Reporter and iHorror didn't run with it? I'm not saying that they haven't made mistakes in the past. I'm just saying that they're a little more in the game now. They have a higher sort of prominence in the field than something like horrorfreaknews.com. So they can't be making that shit. At least they have to do everything at their, they can not to do it. So that's what I have to say about that. Don't do that shit. So what do I think about the validity of the potentiality of this being true? Do I think there's a possibility that this could very well be true? That there could have been a test screening that the vast majority of the audience didn't like? Yes, 100%. What I know? Yeah, absolutely, it could have been true. But the way I read the article, because I can't verify whether it's true, but because what I know about the industry and know how this sequence of events works, development, pre-production, production, post-production, marketing, all this stuff, there's a sequence of events in which things are rolled out, teaser, poster, you can expect a trailer soon, you can expect, there's a sequence of events. Yeah, it's entirely possible. I do believe that because the movie was shot in 5.5 weeks, it's been in post-production for the better part of 2 months now. Is it possible that it could be at an early stage where they could show a test audience? 100%. Yes, it could be. It's possible. My first initial reaction was, oh, that's a little early. But it's possible. It wouldn't be unprecedented. So when I read the information that was in there, which was, a lot of people didn't like the ending. Some of the gripes apparently were, it's nearly 2 hours long. They didn't connect emotionally to the original film as much as they think they should have. There was a lot of exposition in terms of character development that didn't really go anywhere. Because the characters, end up getting killed. Michael was more brutal. There was a little more blood, and maybe some people like that. I don't know. They didn't say what the ending was. They just said a lot of people didn't like the ending. Could all this be true? Yeah, it could be. Could be. But the way I look at that, I look at this and I think to myself, well, let's think about this for a minute. Here's the first thing I have to say. And you've heard me say this 1,000 times. Let's talk about the tone of the movie. It's more brutal, or it's more this, that. That doesn't surprise me, okay? You've heard me say this 1,000 times. They are going back to the roots of the original in terms of who Michael is, the flavor and the essence and the boogeyman of Michael Myers. But what do I say? They're bringing it into the 21st century, right? That's what they have to do. If you were to utilize, and it's unfortunate because I personally think this is far scarier, but if you were to utilize John Carpenter's format for today's audiences, it would fly for people like us, our age, nearly 40 and older, but it's not going to fly for somebody who's 17, 18 because of the hyper sort of sensational world we live in. So will the movie be, I'm not talking Rob Zombie, I'm saying will the movie be a little more modern, have that modern horror feel? Yeah, probably. Yeah, it probably will. The trick is, are they going to utilize the flavor of the original, right? The essence and the mood and the atmosphere and that sort of tone and that vibe of the original. That's what you want. That's what you're looking for. But is there going to be more blood in it? Yeah, probably. Are the kills going to be a little more graphic? Probably. Are they going to be mixed in with some kills that maybe happen off screen, very Carpenter-esque? Yeah, probably. They're probably trying to balance it is what they're doing. We know we can't just release this kind of a movie because kids today are going to be like, the fuck is this shit? I want to see something. But we know we can't release this kind of movie because people my age are going to be like, what the fuck is this shit? Do you know what I'm saying? So they're probably trying to have some sort of balance as long as they get the tone and that kind of thing, bring Carpenter's movie, but kind of into the 21st century. So I read that, I'm like, yeah, I could see people going, I don't really like that or this, whatever. But I can't speak too much on the validity of really anything else because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. But the question is, could this be true? Yeah, it could be. It could be. But this is more a lesson in expectations. That's what I take from this. This is a lesson in expectations. You need to calm your expectations. The chances of this being just as good as the original are very low. Now, notice I didn't say the chances of this movie being good are very low. I said the chances of capturing lightning in a bottle again are very low. I am somebody that liked The Force Awakens. But is The Force Awakens... There we go. Is The Force Awakens just as good as the original trilogy? No, of course not. But for me, and I only speak, for me here, I watched The Force Awakens and I said, I kind of had an issue with that. Didn't quite like that. But it looked like a Star Wars movie. It felt like a Star Wars movie. It was fun. It was what they needed to do to get the series back on track. They needed to do that to get the series back on track. I'm hoping the Halloween film doesn't turn into a series, and you know why. But in terms of Star Wars, they needed to do that. They needed to, get back to the roots, right? Get that flavor. It's different, but get that flavor, that Star Wars flavor there. But bring it into the 21st century. That's probably by and large what you're going to get with Halloween, with this new film. Probably going to be a little bit of nostalgia, going to be some nice nods, for guys my age, we're going to go, oh, and then of course there's but are they going to step up the ante a bit? Yeah, and we know that from what James Jude Courtney said. James Jude Courtney said that this is more of a physical role, right? I just think this is more a lesson of expectations. We have to, calm our expectations. Just because potentially a certain focus group wasn't crazy on it doesn't mean that you're not going to be. Doesn't mean that they might test screen it for another audience and all of a sudden they really like it. You know what I mean? It's all subjective. It's all person specific. Okay? You have to keep that in mind. And yeah, it's just, I'm not bothered by it. I'm really not. I'm really not bothered by this news at all. And again, maybe it's because I have a certain perspective, but I'm not bothered by it. I'm like, yeah, no, this, if I had read something that said, oh my God, this was full on Rob Zombie, and the source was, able to be named, and then Variety picked up the article, and Blumhouse was doing some damage, Blumhouse was doing some damage control, then you kind of go, ooh, hang on a sec here. Let me think about this. Do you know what I mean? But this, nah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Wait for a teaser trailer and we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what the vibe is like. But that's what you have to keep in mind. You have to keep your expectations in check, guys. Something I said, and I've said in a number of my videos, is here's where my expectation is. I want to go to the movie theater and I want to see a good Halloween movie. I want to be able to walk out of the theater going, that was pretty good. That was all right. I'm the chances of me going, holy fuck the 1978 film, we got David Gordon Green's, it's not gonna happen. The chance of it's not gonna happen for a number of reasons, right? You can't capture lightning in a bottle twice. The novelty is worn off. Okay. I have an emotional, nostalgic attachment to that film, so it's always going to hold a special place in my heart. That's old school, classic Hitchcockian horror, right? We're not in that era of horror anymore, which is extremely disappointing. But every now and then a horror movie does come along that has that vibe, which is kind of fun. But by and large, we're not in that era. So my expectations are, if I want to go in, if I leave the theater going, that was all right, that was pretty good, that was fun, that was good job, guys. Well done. It's not going to change, the face of horror. It's not going to, cure any sort of disease, but that was pretty good. That was all right. That was solid. Good job. Solid. Fun. Yeah, it was good. What more can you ask for? Like, really, what more can you ask for? At the end of the day, when you leave the theater, if you hope at the very least that you're able to leave the theater going, turn into your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your husband or your buddy or whatever it is, and you're like, that was pretty good. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, it was all right. It was all right. That was fun. What more can you ask for? If your expectation is, no, I want to go in and be like, woo! Guys, come on. Come on. What are we? 6? Come on. Got a little too into it there. Now, on to John Carpenter. Apparently, John Carpenter, on one of his Facebook pages, somebody asked him, about this article over at horrorfreaknews.com or whatever the site is. And is it true? And apparently, John Carpenter, maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't, I don't know, responded and said, no, it's not true. There hasn't even been, a cut of the film yet. No screening yet. So naturally, I can understand why one would take that at face value and say, well, hey, he's John Carpenter. He's the granddaddy of Halloween. He's an executive producer on this movie. So, he said no, so it must be no. Well, yes, if that makes you feel better and that helps you sleep at night, you can take that and run with it. But the fact of the matter is, he also could be doing damage control if it is John Carpenter. I'm just looking at things objectively, guys. I'm not saying that it isn't John Carpenter. I'm not saying that, he is doing damage control. I'm looking at this this from an objective point of view, okay? Now, I know some people are saying, well, I mean, maybe John Carpenter didn't know about the test screening, right? Well, I mean, maybe. I would find that hard to believe that John Carpenter wouldn't know about a focus group test screening. Maybe he would have been unaware that Blum and, Ryan Turek and maybe, one Friday night they all watched, the movie and John had to go to bed early or something. I don't know. And he didn't find out till like Sunday afternoon or something. I mean, yeah, that might be possible, but to not know about an official focus group test screening would be a little unusual, even in the role that John Carpenter has. John Carpenter, we know, is an executive producer on this film, but like I've said in many of my past videos, I've always seen that as he's more of a creative consultant than anything else. And like I've said many, many times, the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, does not recognize creative consultant as an official credit. So they can't, bring him on board and hire him as a creative consultant, even though that's probably the vast majority of his job. I'm not saying he hasn't done some executive producer things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the vast majority of his job from a creative standpoint in terms of the narrative has probably been more a creative consultant, but they can't hire him as that because they can't credit him as that. And they know that if we bring him on board as an executive producer, right, we can utilize his name in the marketing material. Now, his name did not appear on this first marketing poster, which was a little surprising to me. But, when the official poster comes out, when, the teaser trailer drops, the official trailer drops, the TV promos drop, I would be stunned if his name is not all over the place. John Carpenter presents, from executive producer John Carpenter, because that's going to help put asses in the seats. So, an executive producer's role in television is different. They're known today as showrunners by and large, and they're heavily involved in basically all facets of the creative aspect from a narrative point of view, because in television, directors change from episode to episode, whereas the showrunner or executive producer tends to be there through the entire series, or at least the entire season. So it's their baby, right? They're in charge of things creatively. When you go over to the motion picture side, not so much. An executive producer's role can vary vastly, okay? They can be heavily involved, or they can be sitting there, their asses on the couch accepting a check. So don't put too much stock into the fact that Carpenter is an executive producer, that this means it's going to be a John Carpenter movie. It does not mean that at all. And nowhere is that more apparent than what James Jude Courtney said when John Carpenter made a set visit in Charleston, South Carolina. James Jude Courtney said, yeah, John was there shaking hands, kissing babies kind of thing. I'm saying that. He didn't actually say that, but that's what James, Jude Courtney meant. Yeah, he was there on set, but he took a back seat. He was kind of, in the background. He didn't want to be the elephant in the room, and maybe he offered some advice here and there, but by and large, he was just kind of checking things out because he wanted to see how things were going. But this is a David Gordon Green and Danny McBride movie. It's their movie, okay? But will the flavor of John Carpenter be peppered throughout the movie? Of course, because, they're paying homage to him, right? Again, where Carpenter's going to be heavily involved is the music. That's where you're going to go, oh yeah, that's John Carpenter for sure. So yeah, comment below and let me know your thoughts, folks. I will talk to you guys soon. That's all I got to say. This, for me, was more a lesson for you guys in expectations and what to expect. So hopefully I've calmed some people down. And giving you an objective perspective on what a test screening is, what happens, and what it could mean. But be prepared that if it is true, and this did happen, that, it's possible that Blumhouse and Universal and the executives could look at that and just go, no, I don't fucking care what these people think. This is the movie we want to watch. This is the movie we want. This is the movie we wanted to make. This is the movie we're going to distribute. You got to be prepared for that. You got to just hope that we leave the theater going, that was all right. That was pretty good. And hope that they, take the lessons from the Rob Zombie films and later sequels, like they've said. And I'll tell you right now, if you go to see that movie and it is a Rob Zombie kind of movie, or it is very Halloween 5-ish in terms of things being weird or dumb, or, Halloween, Resurrection, if it does feel like that, don't go back and see it again. Don't then buy it when it comes out on Blu-ray. If you think it's shit, don't put any more money into it. You're going to put the first round of money into it because you want to go see it. That's fair. But then don't continue to contribute to it just because it's a Halloween movie and it's all I've got. No. If you're pissed off, you say to them, I'm pissed off. You didn't say, you didn't do what you say you were going to do. This feels like Rob Zombie's film, not, John Carpenter's film. Fuck you. No. That's how you do it. Okay? But it's still too early to tell that yet. We got to see the movie first. We got to get a vibe from the trailer first, right? So just calm down.